First of all, I'd like to say hello and thanks to everyone for joining us for our webinar today on developing and implementing NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 community profiles. First, to go over some logistics, we will be handling any questions during the webinar through the Zoom webinar question interface. You should be able to type out any questions, and we will either try to answer them in the course of the webinar, or we'll answer them at the end during the Q&A section. You should be able to see the button for asking any questions at the bottom of the Zoom web application. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available online as soon as we have finished processing the recording, so that everyone who registered or attended this webinar will receive a notification at that time with a link to the recording. You can definitely view this yourselves or share this with anyone that you think would find it useful. So with that, to go over what we're going to cover today, first I'll introduce both who I am as well as those who have joined us from this today. I'll then hand it over to Nakia and Julie to go over the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 community profiles. And then I will give a brief overview of NextLabs and our Zero Trust data-centric solutions. Then we'll have a little bit of time at the end to go over some any questions that you may come up. Although, as I mentioned before, you can ask questions anytime through the question and answer, the Zoom question and answer interface. So first, for some brief introductions, I'm very pleased today that I'm joined with Nakia Grayson and Julie Snyder. Nakia is an IT security specialist with NIST, and Julie is a principal cybersecurity and privacy engineer with MITRE. Myself, I am Tony Burning. I'm a senior product manager here at NextLabs, and with that, I will hand it over to Nakia and Julie to go over the community profiles.
So thank you so much for the introduction and inviting us here to give a presentation on paving the way with community profiles. We are excited to speak with all of those who have joined us. We look forward to hearing your feedback at the end of the presentation. So here for the agenda, we're going to provide a introduction of our National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, and then we'll also give a brief overview of CSF 2.0. Then we'll kind of like drill down and talking more about our community profiles, and then share about our framework resource center, which includes our community profiles, guide and template. We will also talk about examples of the current community profiles that we have on our website, and then also talk about next steps, as well as on how to get involved. So just wanted to again give a brief overview of our National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. And so at NCCOE, we bring a lot of different experts together from the industry, government, and academia to address the real world needs of recurring complex IT systems and protecting the nation's critical infrastructure. We were formed in partnership with the state of Maryland and Montgomery County, Maryland, and we help all enterprises from large, small, medium to be able to manage their cyber risk. We integrate standards and community commercially available technologies into example reference architectures or demonstrations that can address specific cyber challenges by providing examples. We help to reduce like several barriers to the adoption of secure technology. The NCCOE was established in 2012 as a applied cyber security lab at NIST. In fact, we are a part of the Applied Cyber Security Division under NIST Information Technology Laboratory. We operate in close collaboration with other NIST experts, programs, and in various other activities and work that's going around NIST. And we at NIST, we are a non-regulatory federal agency. So all our guidance is voluntarily. And then one other piece I'll just mention in 2014, we sponsored the nation's first federally funded research and development center dedicated to cyber. So here we wanted to go over and give a overview of CSF 2.0. Many of you may already know, NIST has updated the widely used Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, which is our landmark guidance for managing and reducing cyber risk. In February of this year, we published the CSF 2.0, and to address current and future cyber challenges and improvements. NIST set out on the journey of developing CSF 2.0. Along the way, NIST, we had looked for various feedback. We put out a request for information. We held several different workshops and had smaller meetings with various stakeholders. And through that, we got a lot of feedback from users and non-users alike. And then we also drafted up documents for public comment periods, and we got feedback in that way as well. And this all resulted in CSF versions 1.0 and 1.1, and most recently, a draft of CSF 2.0, and then which I mentioned that we published in February of this year. With CSF 2.0, there were several key changes that we had looked at, and we started looking at as far as changes in the cyber landscape, risk, technology, standard changes, and we wanted to expand the scope beyond just looking at the critical infrastructure. So aiming at looking at all enterprises and not just those sectors, which was the kind of like the original audience base to be able to manage and reduce cyber risk. And then we added a new core function governing, which now is now the CSF is grouped into 6 functions, including that one is identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, which you can see on the wheel on the right of this screen. And then one other thing that we did was we increased the emphasis of supply chain risk management, and I already touched on that bullet. Was just like we heard a lot of various feedback from stakeholders, and we made those key updates. We developed new resources and tools, and adjusted our guidance based on what was going on in the current landscape of cyber and in that environment. And then we formalized the term community profiles, which we will be talking about for most of this talk this afternoon. So here, we wanted to have this slide here so we can just go over the terminology to help you all be able to understand the CSF 2.0 profiles. With CSF 2.0 NIST, we wanted to call out the difference between a organizational profile and community profile. So organizational profiles, they help a business looking at their current or target cyber posture in terms of the CSF core outcomes. And so in this profile, it can be used to be able to understand, tailor, assess, and prioritize, and be able to communicate the CSF core outcomes by looking at an enterprise, their mission, objectives, their stakeholder expectations, their threat landscapes, and any legal policies that they normally have to adhere to. And in a current profile, like a business, they will want to specify their core outcomes, that what is their business currently achieving or attempting to achieve, and how or to what extent that each outcome has been achieved. And then they'll also want to look at their target profile. So they will want to be able to specify the desired outcomes that their business have decided to prioritize for achieving its cyber risk management objectives. These profiles are normally developed externally and tailored to the specific business, and they're not public out, in the public. As far as community profiles, which we will spend most of our time talking about this afternoon, this describes CSF outcomes to be able to address shared interests and goals amongst many different enterprises and reducing managing cyber risk. The community here, they develop a target profile. So where should the community as a whole be at? And then like a business can take that and try to work towards that target profile. These they are developed sometimes internally by NIST, and then also externally, it could be by a trade association, community groups, and advisory groups. Sometimes we also work with different stakeholders externally to develop these profiles. And these profiles, as I've mentioned, we have done it jointly. We have done it jointly with government agencies, advisory groups, and other groups also out there in the public that they've come to us and they need assistance, and we have helped them along the way of developing a community profile. So here we're just going to kind of go over what is a community. So this can consist of like various enterprises, a business that they have a shared common context and an interest in their cyber posture, including like sectors and subsectors. For example, critical infrastructure sectors, technologies, for example, mobile and cloud, and our other use cases. So here, again, this is very similar to the past information that I touched on a few slides ago, but we wanted to emphasize the point about the CSF 2.0 terms when it comes to profiles. So profiles are one of the three main components of CSF, along with the core and the tier of CSF. So one of the main values here that we have seen is that it is a great way to be able to provide a way to understand, tailor, assess, and prioritize, and be able to communicate on ways on how that giving like sector or subsector on how they can like manage their cyber posture, and also is a good way to have a communication with your leadership on like trying to figure out like what are some key things that you all should be looking for when it comes to like your cyber posture, and being able to identify gaps, uh, prioritize actions to improve your security posture. So here on the slides on the two squares above framework profiles, you will see just the difference between the profiles that I already touched on. But down at the bottom, something that we do at the CCOE is that we work with various teams to be able to implement the CSF 2.0 and help these communities be able to address their cyber challenges. Here, we wanted to just kind of point out what are the benefits of the community profile. And so some of them is being able to use and share a shared taxonomy for cyber in the context of the community, to be able to align requirements from multiple sources, be able to leverage expertise across the community, encourage common target outcomes, and be able to minimize the burden by working together. Sometimes we have heard that it's great for communities to be able to work as a team to be able to develop these profiles, because sometimes maybe they have limited resources and maybe are even like budget. So it helps also being able to work together to hear what are some of the common cyber challenges that a sector or subsector may all be facing, and coming up with like strategies and ways to be able to help improve that security posture. And I would say one of the key things that we have at the bottom thing is being able to communicate about the cyber risk that maybe is going on in that sector or subsector. And for the next slide, I'll be turning it over to Julie to talk more about the Framework Resource Center.
Great. Thank you so much, Nakia. So for the next few minutes, we'll be talking about some of the activities and things we have going on around the NCCOE Framework Resource Center. And these are things that are geared towards helping communities and organizations use CSF 2.0, and a lot of that is focused on community profiles in particular. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. One of the first things that we created when we stood up the NCCOE Framework Resource Center is a draft guide to creating community profiles. And so we're very excited about this guide. We created this as a resource for communities that would like to understand more about what community profiles are and what goes into creating one. What does the process look like for that? So we had three main objectives for the community profiles guide. One was to describe community profiles. So earlier, Nakia shared with us some of the description of community profiles from CSF 2.0, as well as how we elaborate on that description in the guide to help provide a fuller sense of what do we mean by community profile. So for example, in the guide, it talks about what we mean by communities and the benefits of community profiles, just as Nakia did a few moments ago. One of the additional things we were trying to do with this guide is NIST doesn't prescribe a template similar to organizational profiles. There's not a required template or a template that you have to use for profiles. This is really something that organizations and communities are determining how to do on their own. But to help communities get started with community profiles in particular, we offer a simple template in the guide to use as a starting point for those of you that need a little help thinking about content for a community profile. I'll note, and we'll kind of come back earlier, we also publish community profiles that either NIST and the NCCOE are involved in or that others share with us as well. So we have those available as a resource too. And then back to the guide also offers a community profiles lifecycle to help you think through the activities for planning, creating, and managing a community profile. So kind of what are those steps that go into the process of developing this, and what do you do with one once you have one? So Nakia talked earlier about what community profiles are. So let's go into the next slide and we'll take a look at the template in the guide and walk through the community profiles lifecycle after that. So the sample template in the community profiles guide shows a way to help communities align their priorities with outcomes from the CSF 2.0 core. And the guide talks about the types of information that we recommend including, as well as some additional types of information that we typically see in community profiles. So often we see, for example, some type of prioritization. If you look at the framework core and the CSF, they're in the neighborhood of 100 subcategories. I think the latest is 108, if I remember correctly. And so when organizations and communities are looking at that, that's a lot of things to think through doing. And so prioritization can help communities think through, okay, which of these do I need to do perhaps sooner than later? We also included a rationale column in this sample template to provide a place for communities to have that discussion of why did I prioritize certain subcategories a certain way, or are there contextual considerations that go into why we need this subcategory. So just a place to contain and convey important information about the subcategory in the context of the community. And then there's a column there for informative references and mapping. So certainly NIST makes informative references available, and then additional communities have developed mappings to the framework. We've seen things like standards, for example, industry standards that are mapped to the framework. So just a kind of a simple template here. NIST is in the process of creating an updated template based on feedback we've received, both from the guide and some additional conversations that we've been having. And so we'll make that available in the resources section of the NCCOE Framework Resource Center site once that's complete. And if we can go on to the next slide, please. The community profile lifecycle that is in the draft guide is intended to help communities think through the process of creating a community profile. So the life cycle starts with plan, which is when the community identifies its needs, determines the scope and types of information that need to be in the profile, and identifies who will participate in the process. From there, we move on to develop, which is when the community is working to identify shared priorities and align those with the cybersecurity outcomes in the CSF core. So develop also includes engaging the broader community for feedback and communications to ensure the community is aware that the profile is available and ready for use once you've completed the product. And then under use, we talk about how communities can use their community profile for collaborating, coordination, and benchmarking. And then under maintain, we talk about things like measuring impact of the community profile, monitoring and updating based on feedback and evolving needs, and ultimately retiring the community profile if and when the profile is no longer needed. And then finally, you'll see communicate right there in the big middle of the life cycle. We note the importance of communication throughout the life cycle. It's as much a critical function of successfully going through this life cycle, as well as a benefit of bringing communities together. So we really, for the communities that have gone through this process, we've seen where they really appreciate the collaboration and working with counterparts throughout that community to develop the guidance. So a necessity and a benefit. If we could go on to the next slide, please. So the Community Profiles Guide, the draft came out earlier this year in late February alongside Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. And we had a public comment period on the draft that closed in April. Although that comment period is closed, we're always interested in feedback. For anyone listening today that happened to read the guide already and provide feedback, we greatly appreciate that. And thank you so much for taking the time to do that. This really does help us improve the guide. As far as the comments that we received, just to give you a sense of what we've heard so far, there were some requests for adjustments to that community profile lifecycle that I just shared, some requests to focus on some of those ideas a bit more, expanding that content, adding some additional pieces of information and sort of steps to that content. And then we got some feedback on the flow of activities under each of those 4 main phases. So we're working through those things now. And then we also had some requests for clarity. One of the things that seemed to get the most attention in terms of the graphics was the first figure in there, which adapts a CSF 2.0 figure to attempt to show kind of notionally what community profiles look like. We got the feedback loud and clear that might have been a confusing way to represent that. So we're working on a better, more effective way to represent that. And then some requests to kind of rephrase some things in various sections. We got a little bit of feedback on the template structure and content. So that's something that we're working through and creating that additional template. And then some requests for defining terminology like the words taxonomy, and then a number of editorial comments and some comments about maintaining the balance and finding that right level of guidance without being prescriptive. And then if we can go to the next slide. Most of the non-editorial comments really were focused on the community profiles lifecycle. And so while we won't go through all those today, just to kind of give you a sense of some of the themes that emerged there, some of the areas that were requested to expand were the communicate section and the assessments discussion. And so we mentioned the importance of communicate, but perhaps didn't do that full justice in terms of talking about the details of what that means. And then the assessments discussion. We know that assessment comes up a lot around cybersecurity framework. There's a small bit of content on that now. And so there were some requests to expand that discussion because that does tend to be a way that many use the framework and community profiles. As far as requests for adding further content, we had requests for examples of documentation steps and milestones, some requests to acknowledge more fully the roles of threats and vulnerabilities and other information that informs priorities that go into a community profile. We talked in the guide about regulation standards and best practices, but perhaps drawing out more of the types of sources that inform the community profiles. And so again, thank you very much to those of you that took the time to read the guide and share your thoughts. It is informing what we're doing next with the guide as we work to get the final version of that out and published in the near term. And we really appreciate that. If we could go on to the next slide. I mentioned as we were talking about the template that we do have examples of community profiles that are available on the NCCOE Framework Resource Center. The previous home of those was on the NIST main Cybersecurity Framework site, but those have now moved to the Framework Resource Center. So if you're looking for those, there's a pointer from the CSF 2.0 site to our site. Of course, we have a link here at the bottom of the slide as well. This is just a sampling of what's available here on the slide today. They don't all fit on one slide. And of course, we look forward to adding more CSF 2.0 profiles over time. I know we're working on the genomic data profile that was out in draft for framework version 1.1. So more to come, and we look forward to hopefully you all working on some community profiles as well. The next slide, please. There we go. And then one more. So we talked a bit about what we've been doing. So as far as what is coming up here in the near term, certainly we're working with communities to develop some additional community profiles. There's one in the works for artificial intelligence, largely tracking to focus on cybersecurity, but stay tuned for a blog post about that coming soon to kind of talk more about what we're looking at there and calling for input. We're also working with the semiconductor community on a cybersecurity framework profile. I mentioned genomic data. We're working to update the previous draft of that genomic data profile to transition from CSF 1.1 to 2.0 and also to integrate the privacy framework into the profile. And sort of on that note, we are seeing more interest in multi-framework profiles that look at a lot of them, kind of looking at how the cybersecurity and privacy frameworks can be used together. And then a quick asterisk on that for those of you that might be interested in privacy. NIST is in the process of updating the privacy framework, so we're happy to connect you to that process. Now is the time to get feedback in there. But as far as the Framework Resource Center, that's kind of what we're looking at for community profiles. We love doing engagement like this. So thank you again for having us today. And so we're looking to continue to engage with communities, the ones we're working with, certainly helping them transition from 1.1 to 2.0. We love working with new communities as well. And then we continue to do engagement and some outreach to understand what additional resources do you all need to use the framework, use community profiles, and those types of things. So as far as sort of additional content coming from the Framework Resource Center, I mentioned we'll be finalizing the guide for creating community profiles. We're also looking at what we can publish in terms of a guide for transitioning community profiles from CSF 1.1 to 2.0. And then we talked about the template, and then Nakia and I are working on plans for a fall workshop. So stay tuned for the date on that. And with that, let's see, Nakia, I believe I turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Julie. So now we'll just briefly talk about on how you all can get involved. So here we, really just wanted to, mention that there are many ways that, folks can get involved. You can join our community of interest where we send email updates on upcoming events and also to share about our updated resources or any resources that we post on our page that's new. You can also provide feedback on our guide and a template that Julie has mentioned, where we did put it out for public comment, and that has ended. We still look for feedback until we finalize the documents later this year. You can share your thoughts on like what are some other resources that will be helpful to be able to use and develop and adopt community profiles. And then also you can participate in any upcoming events that we host. And at the bottom of this slide is a screenshot of how you can join our community of interest if you visit our webpage, which we will share on the next slide. So here we just want to thank everybody for your input. We think that all the feedback that we get, they really help us be able to develop like stronger work products that can help with being able to use and develop the community profile. So here on this page, we just wanted to, here is our framework resource center webpage where you can find all the information that we went over this afternoon and also our resources. And then if you have any comments or anything that you wanted to share, you can contact us from that email, framework-profiles@nist.gov. And we just wanted to thank you all again, and we'll give it back to NextLab.
All right, thanks. I'm gonna just briefly I'll go ahead and share my screen and give a little bit of an overview about NextLabs for those of you who may not be as familiar. Um, so yeah, just as a quick company overview of who we are a leading provider of zero trust access management and data protection software. And the services through the services we help our customers, including many in the Fortune 100, protect their data anywhere and everywhere. We have many strong worldwide go-to-market and OEM partnerships, including Microsoft, SAP, Siemens, AWS, Accenture, IBM, Deloitte, et cetera, et cetera. We have over 200 employees worldwide, with offices in the United States, Europe, and Asia, and have been awarded over 80 technology patents, with more than 30 still pending. Our Zero Trust Data-Centric Security Suite consists of Cloud AZ, which is our unified Zero Trust policy platform. And that's where you can define many of, if we were talking about the standards introduced or codified in community profiles, that's where you would be able to define those policies. And then we have 3 enforcer products that actually enforce them in different environments. Our application enforcers, which enforce those policies, those data access policies within the application layer. Data access enforcer, or DAE, which enforces policies at the data access layer. And then SkyDRM, which is our digital rights management product, which enforces policies on files and unstructured data. So the core challenge that NextLabs helps our customers address is how to balance the need to share with the need to protect. So data needs to be shared both internally and externally, while making sure that data remains protected. And so this applies to both groups within an organization as well as external business partners and supply chains. So even though data needs to be shared, it's important to protect it at all times, and that is where NextLabs comes in and helps make that protection seamless and allows the business to continue sharing data as needed safely. So our solution to balancing those 2 needs is a centralized policy platform that integrates with an organization's existing systems and applications and enforces those data access policies consistently, no matter when and where the data is being accessed. We have hundreds of integrations with enterprise applications, including content management systems, SaaS platforms, ERP systems, to be able to protect both files and unstructured data, as well as structured data within databases. Those policies are then evaluated and enforced dynamically, allowing us to provide that zero trust protection, where every request for access is evaluated and policies are enforced. So our centralized platform also provides automated audit and compliance reporting to reduce both the amount of time and effort, as well as the risk of any errors or gaps. And so all of this allows us to protect data throughout its life cycle, from when it's created, when it's used, when it's at rest, and when it's on the move. At a high level, our suite includes, as mentioned before, Cloud AZ, which is our unified policy management platform. That's where all of the policies are defined and evaluated with our dynamic authorization policy engine. And then, as mentioned before, we have the 3 enforcement products, SkyDRM, which protects critical files and unstructured data when it's being shared and on the move. Application enforcers, which protects that data within the applications themselves. And then data access enforcer, which secures data within databases at the time of data access. Our basic approach is to we distill it down into 6 steps. So the first is really knowing what type of data you have, and is it regulated? Who should access it? Where it's stored? Really knowing your data and the identities of the individuals or entities accessing that data. Protecting the data at the source where it's created within the applications. Protecting the data in transit when it's shared and also at rest in databases or in other data storage. Protecting the data when it's used. The automation, like automation and orchestration, and where allowing organizations to implement changes to data access policies at speed and at scale. So be able to make changes centrally and have them apply across the organization, across the enterprise. And then also the orchestration piece is connecting and coordinating the security tools and systems to make sure that the correct policies are applied at the correct times. An example of this is our integration with SIMS. And then finally, the visibility and analytics of data usage. So when is data accessed and when are the policies applied? So an example of what we mean by our dynamic authorization policies is that the policy would be defined to allow only customer service representatives to have read-only access on customer sales data in their own region during work hours from an office location. So as you can see here, what we are doing is we're combining attributes of the subject. So checking to see if they're a customer service representative and what their office location is, combining that with environmental attributes. So whether the request is coming during work hours, and then also adding in the resource attributes. So seeing, having this apply to customer sales data and the region for that data, that customer. And then finally, the action performed, like limiting it to read-only access. So this is just a very simple example, but this allows you to define a small number of attribute-based policies that then apply to all situations across an enterprise. When we're talking in the frame of community profiles, this is where you'd be able to define the access requirements that are part of the community profile and have them apply throughout the enterprise, regardless of when and where the data is being accessed. So some of the main business problems that we help organizations solve, modernization products or projects where you can use our products to enforce policies across both legacy and new applications. Enforcing segregation of duties and compliance. So a lot of this ties into whether it's regulations that are defined by regulatory authorities or just standards that are defined by say the community profiles that we talked about today, but enforcing whether that's segregation of duties or compliance in terms of like who can access the data, what those requirements are. We're also used a lot for ERP consolidation projects. So consolidating multiple different, local ERPs into a single global instance and allowing the data to still be logically segregated using our tools so that only the right people are able to access data. Mergers and acquisitions, as well as joint ventures. So again, allowing a single data store to be used, but having the data be logically segregated so only the appropriate people are accessing that data. Cybersecurity. So again, this ties into what we talked about today. So allowing organizations to implement policies and as part of like the community profiles or other parts of just implementing like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Trade secrets, so restricting access to private, intellectual property and other controlled data. And then finally, automating the process of applying these data access policies, and then also updating them as either regulations change or access, the policies themselves change, but our products allow that to be done much more efficiently and greatly reducing the chance of human error. So, so that's a very brief overview. I know it was very quick, but I wanted to be aware and conscious of everyone's time. So, so now we're going to open it up for questions. Again, the Q&A option within the Zoom webinar interface allows you to type out any questions, and then myself, Nakia, and Julie will be able to answer them. I see there is one question already in there about whether the recording will be available to review later. Yes, this is being recorded. We will send out a link to the recording once we've done the post-processing, and we have been able to post it online. That can be shared not only with those who attended and registered, but also anyone that you think would find the information useful. Just to also kick it off, I have one question myself, and this is more for Nakia and Julie. So, in general, looking at it from a vendor's perspective, obviously from a vendor, it helps if industries have standardized on cybersecurity practices and requirements, because that allows us to really make sure our products meet those requirements. And I can see also how it would be an easy sell, to get industries to standardize on things where they either see it as like a regulatory requirement they have to meet, or that it's a cost center where it's something that they have to implement. But one of the things that I think might be a bit trickier is within an industry where some of the organizations might view their cybersecurity practices as a competitive advantage. And so how then do you get them to engage and contribute to defining a community profile, because they're probably going to be a little bit more reluctant to give up what they see as a potential competitive advantage that they have with their industry peers.
So Tony, I'll take that one, and then Nakia, of course, please feel free to add in. So I love this question, and I love when this topic comes up of cybersecurity as a competitive advantage, because it is part of the, I think, natural evolution, and we see this conversation with privacy as well, of kind of building capabilities. When we work with communities on these profiles, one of the things we encourage is, let's all do cybersecurity well together. We all need to do it. It's critical to many facets of any community. Let other things be the things that you compete on, your innovative tools and technologies, your processes for doing whatever your core business functions are. But let's all do cybersecurity well together. It helps kind of build trust in the community space, whether that's an industry or a subsector, whether that's a technology space. And it also kind of gets the word out to adversaries of, oh, okay, this community is really kind of working on strong stuff. Maybe this isn't worth our time or effort. So that's kind of my personal take on it, is let's not compete on cybersecurity. Let's compete on the other things that are more unique to our organizations and communities, and partner on the cybersecurity aspects. Nakia, anything you want to add or share to that?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Yeah, I would just say, kind of like similar to what you had stated. I do think that maybe they should be worried more about a few other things, because at the end of the day, just to think about back to the main goal here about with the profile, with the community profiles, they're just coming together on what are some of the common cyber problems that one may face, and trying to figure out as a team on how they can work together to kind of mitigate and manage those cyber risks. I think that should be the more of the focus here, instead of thinking about the advantages that you may someone may share information to a business that they won't probably want to they don't, it's an advantage if they don't maybe share information, but it's also very important to work as a team to kind of figure out what are some of the common problems in that sector, and working together to come up with various ways on how to mitigate that risk.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it is changing the mindset that there's much greater gains by working together than by almost in a way like hoping that misfortune falls upon your competitors so that you can take advantage of it. So maybe related to that, and also coming from a vendor perspective, so what would be your recommendations for how vendors should be able to contribute? So a vendor like NextLabs, we would expect to work across like multiple communities and be able to contribute to those profiles. But there's also then a potential conflict of interest, like everyone's worried about whether we have an axe to grind in terms of trying to shape standards to what fits our particular products. But just I think that'd be common to vendors in general. So do you have any recommendations or thoughts on the best way to vendors to engage, and where it doesn't either hinder the process or turn off like industry participants because they feel like they're getting a sales pitch?
Yeah, I would say, various different ways. Like one is like, probably do like a vendor mapping to the CSF 2.0. We saw like various like vendors do that, where they they take this CSF and then kind of like look at how like their tools are lined up with the CSF, and what type of capabilities do they have to address the different core outcomes. And that has we've seen that, and that's something that I think more vendors are like looking to do. And I guess, Julie, if you wanted to add anything about that as well.
No, thanks. That's exactly what I would have covered.
Okay, great. Yeah, as a little bit of a plug for NextLabs, we have for anyone who's interested, we have just recently published a white paper on the CSF 2.0, where we do go into that and do map, at least in a part of it, our product offerings to the different areas of CSF. I don't see any other questions right at the moment. So just as we're waiting to see if there's any last minute questions coming in, I'll just mention again that we will have the recording available. Everyone who registered and attended the webinar will get a link to that recording as soon as we have finished processing it and have it available. And if there are any other questions, you can definitely reach out to us, and we're happy to, if it's particular to your organization, I think we're happy to schedule a time to talk about the specifics. But once again, thanks to everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Nakia and Julie, for coming and collaborating with me on this. I also mentioned to everybody else we will have additional things that we're collaborating with the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence on, and so look out for those as well. But any final thoughts or words, Nakia and Julie?
Yeah, I guess it was something I was going to ask Julie, just to point out one thing, and maybe we can both expand on it. But I wanted to just like ask Julie, what are some of the like problems that you kind of heard, or like maybe like challenges that you've heard from like groups that they have faced when they're starting to first develop a profile?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. So I mentioned with Tony's question earlier about competitive advantage. We've seen where some people are a little bit hesitant to get in the room together, but once the process starts going and they see the sort of level of discussion, they tend to sort of relax into that. Another just kind of challenge is for communities that haven't yet worked with something like this. I think there tends to be a little bit of a sense of overwhelm. So that's where I hope things like the guide can help people see what the path forward is. Sometimes there's questions of, what do we even put in the profile? Do we want a simple table that just shows basic touch points between key things to our community and the cybersecurity framework core? Or do we need to have some more dialogue to help our community use this profile and understand what we did, why we did it, how we got here? And so kind of working through that, what do we actually need, can feel a little bit challenging in the beginning, but once the conversation starts flowing, it typically tends to flow. One of the other things that I really like to see from communities, I think it's natural to understand we need cybersecurity people involved in the conversation, right? We're talking about a cybersecurity framework, but part of the power of profiles, whether you're talking about a community profile or an organizational profile, is pulling together operational kind of mission, business, functional experts in that organization or community, because part of the power of a profile is that you're connecting cybersecurity concepts to what's important to your organization or community. So you're helping describe what are the cybersecurity things that I most rely on for the critical things that have to happen for me every day. And it pulls that cybersecurity conversation out of the cybersecurity organization and makes it easier to connect those dots between what do I have to do every day and what are the cybersecurity things that support that. And that helps make better, stronger decisions about, do I need this certain tool, or do I need to do more monitoring here versus there, and kind of prioritizing what cybersecurity activities need to happen, not just because they're generally a good idea for cybersecurity, but what's actually going to help you be more secure. So those are some of the things that come to mind most immediately.
Yeah, great. Sounds good. That was one point that I was gonna make about, like, I think it's really key for different experts. Like, if you're gonna start a profile, it's just making sure that you have the different experts and that's like touching and have different backgrounds to help be able to develop the profile. I think that's really key to like starting on developing a profile, is making sure that you have different thoughts and perspectives in the room that can really help you get through the CSF core. I'll turn it back over to you, Tony.
Great, thanks. Yep. Yeah, so I don't see any other open questions. So again, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Nakia and Julie for joining me today. And if there are any other questions, then please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a good day.
Thank you so much for having us, Tony.
So much.
Thank you.